So now our topic will be one base for all EV infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm here to talk about a foundation for EV chargers, a universal one, i.e. the one that you put below ground to anchor the charging stations. And why is that so important? I mean, it's hidden below ground and it's hardly for anyone to see. Well, because now, for the first time ever, we're starting to see mass rollout of EV charging infrastructure. And there's a wide variety of different EV charging stations, but yet there is no standardization on how you put them in the ground. And this is still, while the biggest cost driver for installing these are just that. It comes from groundwork. So this creates a barrier and a lock-in effect for those owning charging infrastructure if they want to expand, if they want to change, if they want to stay future-proof. And traditional anchoring methods, they fail really to address these issues. And with traditional anchoring methods, I mean other types of foundations usually meant to anchor, for instance, lighting poles, traffic signs, engine heaters. It can also be the station manufacturer's own foundations that comes with the charging station itself. Or you can cast them on site. But what they all have in common is that the risk of future costly groundwork is there. So if you want to expand in the future, there is a big risk that you in, let's say, 5 or 10 years from now, have to redig the street only to facilitate a new charging station of another manufacturer. You shouldn't also forget that about 10% gets knocked down by traffic or is vandalized for some reason or another. And if you then have an installation, that means that you will have to do groundwork every time you change a charging station. You will have a very costly and cumbersome installation to maintain. So we solve this by a patented foundation for EV chargers. It can accommodate any charging station model by adapting the top piece of the foundation, i.e. the piece that is above ground level. Currently we have about 50 supported charging models, and we constantly add new ones as they arrive on the market. And we have also built in a very important functionality, and that is that it will brake above ground level. So if you do have a crash, it will not affect the position of the foundation below ground level. So what we say to our clients is that we will help you to only have to do groundwork once at the first installation. If you have repairs, you can change without having to dig again. If you have new demand, if you have planned it correctly, you can change or you can expand without having costly groundwork, or you can change your charging station from one manufacturer to another. And if you prepare for future installations when you do the first installation, there's a potential that you can save up to 80%. And I think you can easily see that by just looking at this picture here. The actual cost does not come from the charging station themselves or the communication or anything else. It comes from the groundwork and the related restoration around the trenching. Our concept is well proven. We've been in the market since 2010, mainly in Scandinavia. We have over 4,000 unique installations with some of the leading clients on the market, for instance, SDG&E, PG&E in United States, E.ON Fortum in Scandinavia, and ANA in Italy. And currently we're operating in 16 countries. Yeah, so what I wanted to show with this picture is a live example from Stockholm. So Stockholm has a quite ambitious plan to put out 4,000 public charging points by 2022, and by 2030 put out 25,000 charging points. So that's a very ambitious plan, and that really takes some planning, and you cannot really have a scattered approach. So what they have done together with their grid-owning company, Ellevio, is that they have mapped out all the possible future locations of charging infrastructure. And together with the grid owner, they try to combine the already ongoing city restoration groundworks. And by doing that, they can offer a reduced cost to the charge point operators and say that we have this groundwork going on here. We can now install and prepare foundations and make everything ready below ground level. And then you can attach your hardware at a later stage. Would you be interested in that? And their calculations is that it will save about 50% by doing it this way. And also what you shouldn't forget is that only because you have mapped out a charging street now that is of interest now, there's nothing that says that in a few years from now this will no longer be a charging street, simply because the city is a living environment, things change. So what you shouldn't forget is that you should have a long-term flexibility on this, meaning that if you want to change from one location to another, you should avoid to have costly groundwork again. And here I have a business case that we have done, and I won't go in too much into the figures unless you want me to, but I think what I want to show here is that really the foundations in themselves is a very, very small cost in relation to the overall investment. It's usually less than 1%. So my advice, if you are considering in making charging infrastructure installations, would be to do not save on the foundations, because that will lead to additional costly groundwork in the future. And another observation, if you have a look at this, is that repeated groundwork is really something that you want to avoid. As soon as you have a groundwork need, your total cost will go up. And lastly then, try to also plan and prepare. So when you do the first installation, do for what need you have now, but make sure that you prepare so that you easily can scale when future need is there without having to do groundwork again. And also in one of these pictures you can see a damaged or a traffic damaged charging station that is mounted on a specific foundation. And what has happened is that not only has the charging station been knocked over, but also has the foundation been damaged below ground level. And there's no other way than to actually have an excavator out to repair this. And it's not only about the money here, because oftentimes in city environments, you will have certain special permits to do digging work. And that will mean that you have a charging station unoperational for sometimes many months before you have the permit. Do you want me to go into the examples a little bit more, or is this fine, you think? What I've done here is basically that we've compared the savings that you can do if you prepare rather than to install everything at once, or if you install only for what your need is now, and then later have to revisit to make civil works again. So the potential here is basically between, I would say, 10% and 50%, depending on how the city environment looks. In some areas, it may even be even more costly to go there and do groundwork again. So it really depends. Yeah, and what we are also trying to do is to develop into new materials. So we are here, our primary goal is obviously to help electrify the car fleet on a bigger scale, but also see what we can do production-wise. Is there something we can do to take away, for instance, cement or concrete that is CO, carbon dioxide emitting? So for instance, we could look into replace some of that material by reused plastics and help the car industry also in the production phase. And our long-term goal is to help to achieve an EU standard on how we anchor, and by that save cost and help get better speed on how we put out EV charging infrastructure. This is our team. It was actually meant to be Pia that should be here today. She speaks perfectly German. I don't, unfortunately. But this is the rest of our team. And we've been on the market since 2010, as I said in the beginning. Some short figures about us. Funded 2010, turned over $1.2 million last year. 4,000 installations and about 500 of those in high power chargers. That builds on the same methodology that we have for the destination chargers, i.e. flexibility, interoperability, neutrality in how you anchor them in the ground. And currently in 16 countries, with France that we actually installed today, our first installation. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I will be outside if you have any questions for me.
Are there any questions in the moment? But perhaps you can talk to him later if you like to. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.